These days, software is eating the world. In other words, many companies, to a greater or lesser extent, are software companies. But at the same time, many companies are struggling to manage their software engineering. For example, Volkswagen is struggling with the company's new car ID.3's software feature. And also Boeing's 737 MAX aircraft were grounded in 2019 for the two tragic crashes caused partly by a software flaw. The reason why many companies are having a hard time dealing with their software is software is hard and hard to keep up with, mainly in three ways. First, there is a problem with the computer coding itself. In computer coding, hyperliteralness is very important. It means a tiny error like a misplaced punctuation mark can completely change how a system behaves. But depending on how they work, programmers make between 0.5 and 50 errors every 1,000 lines of code they write. So that means that the chances of an error-free system are in effect zero. The second problem is that the second problem lies in computer engineering as a profession. These are laid out in a book called The Problem of Software Engineering: Why Smart Engineers Write Bad Code. The author is Adam Baugh, who was a Microsoft engineer for 20 years. He says that most programmers are at least partly self-taught, and that leads to bad habits. And many software engineering courses fail to correct them. To make matters worse, there is very little communication between academia and industry, so there is almost no agreement on what to teach and what habits to instill. So that results in a field where folklore or fads too often take the place of professional standards. To illustrate the field's shaky foundations, Mr. Baugh points to the practice, popular with technology firms like Google or Microsoft, of giving job candidates a programming problem to solve on a whiteboard. No other fields behave that way because they assume that having graduated means that applicants have already achieved a basic level of competence. For example, doctors do not expect anatomy quizzes before being hired, or mechanical engineers do not need to jot down Newton's laws of motions to prove their competence. All these problems are compounded by software engineering's breathless rate of change. Today this system works, and tomorrow it becomes obsolete. And and some programmers just want to just try to stick to the older systems, and that leads to software disaster. For example, British banks experienced software outages, online outages, and botched IT upgrades, and that's because their developers were trying to maintain legacy systems written by long departed programmers. Um, Many companies are trying to solve these software problems. For example, Volkswagen is trying to bring most software engineering back in house and try to create a shiny new digital unit. Mm, that is probably a good idea, but the structural problems with writing code mean that spending money on it does not by itself guarantee success. Um, so here comes the great advantage possessed by startups like Tesla. Um, that is that the, that it which is that their developers are handed a blank sheet of paper. It means they have no legacy systems to maintain, and fewer bugs to root out. That leads to more robust software system, and the developers can concentrate on features for customers. But the bad news is that their advantage may be proved temporary. Because bugs will eventually creep in, but jobs will go unfixed, and developers will leave, taking knowledge with them. So, as a result, today's feisty usurpers will become tomorrow's clumsy incumbents, and they have to brace themselves for disruption in turn.